Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cast and Spear podcast. My name is John, and today we have something a little different. This podcast was recorded over 18 months ago with somebody that I consider one of my spearfishing mentors. He goes by Cut Professor on Instagram. It's Matt Bond. This guy pushes the envelope in the kitchen with the fish. He also, behind the scenes, pushes to make sure that spearfishing is around for us all to enjoy. But before we get into the podcast, if you wouldn't mind doing me a huge favor and leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, it helps other people find the show and it would mean the world to me. All right, so let's jump into the podcast. Hope you guys enjoy. Well, Matt, welcome to the show. Appreciate you spending some time coming out and hanging out with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I've appreciated getting to know you over Instagram a little bit and the chats we've had. So thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, dude, you've been nothing but education, and I appreciate that as well. I want to just have you introduce yourself to the listeners. If you just tell us a little bit about Matt.
Yeah, my name's Matt Bond. I currently live up in Northern California. I grew up in a small town right outside of Santa Barbara called Isla Vista, right on the coast. Been spearfishing mostly my whole life. I think since I was 10 or 11, I'm about to turn 47, so quite some time. And cooking the fish the whole time. We grew up with meager means, and me getting fish as a kid was a big part of what we put on the table. So learned to respect it. Was around a lot of different cultures where I grew up. There was a university there, and so there was a whole bunch of different ethnicities, and got to taste all kinds of foods and fell in love with it. So the marriage of spearfishing and food, and I garden and everything, is kind of where I'm at now. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, my cousin went to UC Santa Barbara, and I'm surprised he made it out of Isla Vista. I'm doubly surprised that you were able to make it out. That place is nuts.
Yeah, it's when I grew up there, and I still go visit. My mom still lives near there. It was a very different place than it is now. Still nuts, but very, very different. But I owe a huge part of, I think, my personality and understandings of things to that weird little quarter, I don't know what it is, half mile of the universe. It was a fun place to grow up, that's for sure. And great, great spearfishing, halibut. I went to UCSB. I ended up getting an economics degree. And I would, in between classes, I would put my cooler and spearfishing stuff in the back of my old pickup truck, and then go spear a couple halibut right there at Campus Point. So, and I'm not giving away any secret spots. That's a well-known area. So it was a great place to grow up for sure.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into spearfishing and kind of what your mentors, or did you have any mentors?
Yeah. So I got into spearfishing. It was an extension from playing in tide pools. I grew up right next to the beach. We go down to the tide pools all the time, and catch octopus and get mussels and abalone at the time. We'd find lobster. I've grabbed cabezon, and and we would honestly, like hunter-gatherer style with my buddies, a lot of them from Southeast Asia, walk up and down the beaches, sometimes really far distances, and bring food home, and their parents would cook it. So that was very meaningful. When I was very young, like 5, 6, 7, like that, I had a friend named Rafe, and his dad, Raphael, same name. And they had a good friend named Fred. He was a math teacher at our local junior high. They would spearfish. They would go out and spear halibut, free diving. They'd get lobster. They'd get abalone. And we would go down to the beach with them. And like a lot of little kids, you see these just mysterious giant sea creatures. And it just immediately hooked me mentally. Like, I want to do that, right? And so just being at the beach and paddling around with what are those swim goggles on and looking at stuff. But I remember, I think I was like in the end of 5th grade, early 6th grade, actually going out and putting a nail in a broomstick with goggles on and my boogie board fins, and poking a thornback ray and getting it. And learning that they're not very good to eat, but I ate it. And that, I think, was the first fish I got. So that's how I started. And then from there, it became almost like, I think like a lot of us, you just get enraptured in it. That it's been just a part of life, and learning. So, and then I realized, mentors are key. So I figured out there was this dude, Brent McQueen, who I still am real good friends with. We were texting today. He was a Long Beach Neptune, going to UCSB in the 80s, like 84, 85, spearing sheephead and little white sea bass and stuff. And he cleaned the laundromat where we lived, and was the Domino's pizza delivery guy. And me and my buddy Leaf, who I spearfished with, Or we got to find this guy. So we would stalk that dude and just ask him questions about everything. And so I learned a lot from him. And my whole life has been in each stage, not only in spearfishing, but in business and everything else, finding mentors and learning from it. It's the easiest, most effective way, I think, to learn.
It's such a hack to just be able to pull people's knowledge just right
The
there.
key is
better
to
than
just
books
listen.
and
Yeah.
right.
The key is like, it's so much easier now. Like we're doing things like this. It's so cool. I listen to podcasts like incessantly. I drive a lot for work in the Bay Area, and man, you can learn so much. And the key is to put your ego aside, I think, and go through a process of, do I respect this person? Do I trust this person? Okay, what they're doing works. Let me do it exactly how they say to do it. Now, later on, I can modify it, but first start by learning exactly, like modeling behavior. And I think that's been something that's helped me really accelerate that life hack, is being really open to maybe doing things differently based on respect and trust of the mentor.
That's such a good point. I mean, the ego kills so much potential. I've
Yeah.
learned that the hard way, Going back to that thornback ray with your homemade pole spear, did you put a little hook at the end of that nail, or
No,
you
I
just
just
stab it
nailed it
right
and then
there
held
and
it
just
down
grabbed it?
and grabbed it, dude. Yeah. Yeah, I
Impressive.
vividly remember that thing. Yeah, and it was I must have got a decent poke on it, because it didn't go that crazy, but I went down and I kind of trapped it to the bottom and then grabbed it. And then we ended up like roasting it on the beach, probably on some, if you know Santa Barbara, all the driftwood has tar on it. So wasn't the most delicious.
Extra flavor. It's all good.
Yeah, but man, just seeing that, and getting a fish and all that was pretty addictive for sure.
That's awesome. What other stuff did you talk about during your little talk? Because I think you said recently you went to the Santa Barbara Freedivers
Santa Barbara
Club.
Freedivers did a what do you call it, like a Zoom or type meeting. It was mostly what we just talked about in the last, let's say, minute. Who were the people? I really tried to focus on everyone I grew up with. It was a different time, most of our spear guns we made. There was far fewer people. There was not an internet to get all kinds of information. So you kind of had to meet people and go to clubs. So I just talked about that different time and how we learned. I told some stories of growing up diving, and then some of the bigger fish that I've speared in my life, but mostly stories about friends. And just a message of like, I've been doing this 37 years, I think 36 years. And a lot of those same people that I started with are still really good friends. And I see some behaviors now in terms of like ego stuff and burning spots and jumping in on top of each other, that I just laid out some thoughts of like, we are almost like a band of hunter-gatherers. And if you look at how true egalitarian hunter-gatherers societies work well over long term, they have clearly defined rules, mostly designed around respect. And so I ended with just kind of like, respect each other, be nice to each other. Hopefully we'll all be doing this for a long time and have gray hair like me now and laugh about when we used to dive when we were kids,
Absolutely. Do you have those rules like outside of the high level golden rule, but
the goal, like seriously, like one important one these days is respecting the resource. I think, a lot of guys like to shoot fish and take pictures of them. I shoot fish and take pictures of them, post them. I'm always sure to make sure everybody knows that I'm eating every piece of that stuff, and using it and respect the catch. There are people among us who just take pictures. I know some famous people who just take pictures and then try to give the fish away. And then if they can't, it goes to waste. I know some really good guys that don't eat fish.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
That's such a foreign concept for me, man. Like, to be honest,
you started with it with food, but there's a lot of people that start with it by seeing it on Instagram or YouTube, think it's cool, want to go shoot a fish, and the afterthought is the eating part of it. So that's just a personal thing. I think, make sure it's used. Remember always that there's a lot of eyes on you. If you've got a private account, you have vegan people looking at your stuff. I've been involved deeply in fisheries management with the Marine Life Protection Act back in the 90s. And I would hate to go through that process now with the Environmental Studies Department at UCSB's or Scripps or wherever else showing videos of people doing dumb stuff with fish. cutting the head off and putting it on their head and walking around be mindful, you're killing something, right? And we are the most ridiculous one of us speaks for the tribe on the internet, right? That's
only as good as our lowest common denominator.
That's right. I would say really importantly, like respecting people's spots. We all in the old days worked for spots. There's a lot of very well-known spots now, particularly for things like white sea bass and stuff like that. Seasonal spots where things come back every year. Even though it's a well-known spot, don't take a picture of it and post it on the internet with the data behind it. That type of stuff. Look for your own spots. Don't jump in on other divers. I mean, that's a good one. Guys are on the spot already. Give them a distance.
Oh, people come in, like just come right in all the time.
Do you dive the islands much?
Not. I only dive Catalina.
Okay.
Primarily, otherwise Baja. But I mean, usually it's always a crew. I mean, I guess I know what you're saying because there's been some times
I've been in La Paz in Baja, on Isla Cerralvo on the backside diving for tuna, front side diving for tuna. And there was it's friggin' Sea of Cortez. We didn't see anybody else. And we had a boat drop divers right on top of us out of like the whole freaking ocean there. It happens all the time. And and I knew the people. They just happened to be on a different trip. And I knew who they were. And, then you have tensions and words and stuff like that. That stuff. I'd say also like with friends that take you to spots or, I always ask people, like I go, hey, can you dive? No, you can't dive. Would you mind if I went and dove so-and-so, that place? I mean, just regular respect, even though we don't own the ocean. And I've heard over and over and over, it's a big ocean. We don't own it. People have a lot of vested emotions in their different spots, particularly if they live by them. So just be respectful and, that's all.
I think that's very smart.
Yeah.
Hey guys, one more thing before you go. You can subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your favorite podcast app. And if you like the podcast, please consider rating it on Apple Podcasts and leaving a review. This helps other people find the show. Thanks.